Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Juan's World. And as I intimated on Friday, I had a topic that I wanted to perhaps discuss, but I wasn't sure. Well, I'm sure now because my publishing work is in hiatus right now, and so I've got plenty of time to do other things. What I wanted to talk about was a poem that Rudyard Kipling wrote in 1890 called just Mandalay. But now most people know it as The Road to Mandalay because it was set to music a number of times, and that was the title that several people who set it to music gave it. So, and that's how I've always known it. It's called Mandalay, but we're going to call it The Road to Mandalay at this point. It's always, always, always been on my mind. My father used to sing a version of it way back when I was a little boy in the 1950s. And the version that he sang came from the 1920s, but had been on various recordings, mostly 78 recordings as it happens. And the chorus was well known. You know, come ye back to Mandalay, where the old flotilla lay, and so on. And I don't know, I just thought it was interesting. And it kept in my mind for years and years and years until eventually I decided that I had to go on the road to Mandalay myself, and I did. 6 years ago, 7 I guess now, I moved to Myanmar, to Mandalay, and taught in a school there for a year. And so I want to just give my impressions of Kipling's poem and what people think of Kipling's poem, which is mostly one of two things. Either he's a hateful colonialist and we can't stand him, or he really understood people in Southeast Asia and South Asia, and we need to give him credit. Well, I'm not going to do either of those. I think he was a bit of both. I think he like knew something and was sympathetic in some ways and was completely ignorant in other ways. So let's get into it. All right, now, the poem was published in 1890 based on a visit to Burma. Now, let me just also clarify here. Back then it was called Burma. Now it's called Myanmar. And the difference has to do with the fact that the Burmese people, Burmese language, are a majority ethnic group in Myanmar, but there's a lot of other ethnic groups. And by calling the country Burma, the government is essentially saying the Burmese or Burman people are the most important. Well, they probably are, but they're trying to give credit to other ethnicities, the Mon, the Shan, and so forth. So I'm going to use Burma as a sort of, what would we call it, a historical anachronism maybe, or something like that. Because Burma is the word he's going to use in the poem, and Burmese, and so that's why I'm going to do it. Right, so in 1889, at the age, I think, of 24, Kipling had been living in India for 7 years. And he returned to Britain by a rather circuitous route. I mean, normally you would take a boat and go west and land up in Europe. via the Suez Canal. But he went east. He started off in Calcutta, and his first stop was what was called Rangoon in those days. It's now called Yangon, and was the capital. But an interesting thing about Burma is that typically when they changed kings, they also changed capitals. And I think at the time that Kipling was there, Mandalay was the capital. It was the capital under the last king, Thibault, but then it moved to Rangoon, and it's moved again now. It was in Yangon for a long time, and it's now moved to a different place. So first of all, what is the road to Mandalay? Well, that's kind of the point of the poem in a way, is that the road, quote unquote, road to Mandalay is not a paved road, it's the river Irrawaddy. And British troops went up and down from Rangoon to Mandalay and back by paddle steamer, and there was a flotilla that took them up and back, and that's what's referred to in the chorus. Or it's not really a chorus, but refrain-ish thing. All right, so in 1889, he traveled from Calcutta to I think it was San Francisco, and then across the United States, and then took another steamer from eastern United States to London. First stop on his trip from Calcutta was Rangoon. Not surprisingly, Rangoon is a major port in that part of Southeast Asia. And he must have taken a ferry or a boat or something across to a city that's now the fourth largest city in Myanmar, which in the poem is called Moulmein, which is an anglicization of the Burmese, and I can't really pronounce it. I'll put it up on the screen here. It's Moulmein, I think. So he traveled across there, I guess just for tourist purposes or something like that, and says in his diary that he wasn't particularly interested in the temple there, the pagoda. He was interested in a woman he saw sitting on the steps, and he claimed, among other things, that Burmese women are the most beautiful in the world, and that in the next life he wants to return as a Burmese man because he thinks that they are wonderful people, and blah blah blah. And then we get Mandalay, and it's this sentimental look back on his days in the army in Burma by a Londoner who's been in the army for 10 years. Well, I don't know how much time British soldiers stationed in Burma had to be wandering around pagodas in Moulmein, but I guess that's just a sort of literary device, poetic license, if you like, for talking about a man who prefers living in Burma to living in London, and the reason he prefers it has to do with the woman that he's been involved with. We know. He talks about kisses, but we can imagine more than that. All right, so let's get started. And the point that a lot of commentators have made for a very long time is that Kipling knows nothing about Burma. He certainly knows nothing about its geography, and he doesn't know anything about the Irrawaddy River, the actual road to Mandalay. He's never been on it. The best he knows about Burma is a small amount of time that he spent in Rangoon, and maybe a day in Moulmein. So he says, by the old Moulmein pagoda looking eastward to the sea. Now I'm sitting on on the side here because I want to be able to post the actual text beside me, because I'm not going to go in detail, but I'll read it out, but I'll also let you see it so that you know where we're going. So up here somewhere, I'll put the text. So by the old Moulmein Pagoda, looking eastward to the sea. Well, here we start off with just terrible geography, because first of all, you can't see the sea from Moulmein. It's not on the coast. It's near. It's on a huge, like sprawling estuary, not the Irrawaddy. The Irrawaddy drains in several directions, but one of them is into a creek in Rangoon, and then into the bay, and across the bay is Moulmein, which is on a completely different river. It kind of looks. I'm going to put up a photo here. It kind of looks like you're looking at the sea when you look out from this particular pagoda, which I'm guessing is the one that he visited. I don't know, but it's the main pagoda in Moulmein, and it's very, very old. I think it was built in the 9th century. And when you look towards the water, you are looking west. the main bay is to the west of Moulmein, not the east. So looking eastward to the sea is completely wrong. And then the soldier says, "There's a Burma girl a setting, and I know she thinks of me." Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know how much interaction there was between British troops and Burmese in general, but Burmese women in particular. I mean, we're talking about the late 19th century. We're not talking about, Pattaya or Phuket in Thailand in the 21st century, where foreigners go all the time to find women, and there's plenty of them working as tourist attractions, if you like. This is the 19th century, when England had taken over Burma by force as an extension of the Indian Raj. In fact, for decades, Burma was included in the Indian Raj, and you can't imagine people being delighted at the soldiers being there, and they fought 3 different wars before they finally just ultimately got independence. But they didn't. That was not until after all kinds of other struggles in the 20th century. So how did this poor squatty, like, I don't know if he was it doesn't say whether he made it to corporal or not. It certainly wasn't a sergeant, but he was some Londoner in the army because he couldn't get work at home, stationed in Burma, probably fighting a lot of the time. And how is it that some Burmese girl is attracted to him? Well, that's Kipling's invention, his fiction. So now we get to the refrain: "Come ye back to Mandalay, where the old flotilla lay." Well, the old flotilla is the flotilla on the Irrawaddy. Can't you hear them paddles chunking from Rangoon to Mandalay? Well, it's all very nice, but Kipling doesn't know anything about it. And then the next line makes it obvious: "On the road to Mandalay, where the flying fishes play." Flying fishes are saltwater fishes. They don't live in rivers. He's never seen a flying fish in the Irrawaddy. And then the dawn comes up like thunder out of China, cross the bay. Well, if you're in you'd have to be in Rangoon to be across the bay, because the bay that separates Rangoon from Walmain is geographically, Moulmein is in the east of the bay, and Rangoon is in the west. So from Rangoon, if you look east across the bay, you will see the sun rising. You won't see China. China's a long, long, long way away. You can't, you know, with the curvature of the earth, you cannot see China from Rangoon at all. So his geography and his biology are completely wrong. So now, next verse, her petticoat was yellow and her little cap was green. I don't know. I mean, probably, yeah, could be. I mean, I don't know of anything like a cap that Burmese women wear these days, but it could have been. I don't know. This must be a memory of something. And her name was Supayola. Well, that's the queen's name. That was the last queen of Burma. And common, you know, like ordinary Burmese people would not take the queen's name. I suspect, like, he got back to England and he started writing his poem. Didn't have internet. No, what am I going to call her? I don't know. I don't know any Burmese. I don't know any names of any Burmese people. So let's just take the one name that I do know, the Queen's name, and I'll call her that. You know, and I seed her smoking a whacking white cheroot. Well, yeah, that's probably true. I mean, he does say, and other visitors to Burma at that time do say, that it was common for women to make cigars out of loose tobacco and wrapped in a tobacco leaf. But then wasting Christian kisses on an heathen idol's foot. What's a Christian kiss? She's not a Christian, she's a Buddhist. And then he goes on this rant, which I'll pull up here. Bloomin' idol made of mud, what they call the great god Bud. Well, that's also a complete misunderstanding. He's come from India, where the people are mostly Hindu at the time. And so he's encountering Buddhism for the first time, and he thinks Buddha's a god. Buddha's not a god. Buddha was a man. That's like calling Muhammad a god, because he's the main prophet of Islam. Muhammad was not a god. He is not a god. He's a man. And Buddha's not a god. He's a man. So the great god Bod is all wrong. And then vanity. You know, like, okay, like when I kissed her, then she changed her mind and she converted from Buddhism to me. Oh dear, dear, dear. And then to get the refrain again, and then this bit where he talks about the mist on the rice fields. Well, that's legitimate. In the morning, sometimes there can be low-hanging mist or fog on the rice fields, which are, of course, rice paddies. They're flooded in water, and steam's going to rise up from them in the early morning. She got her little banjo also. Like, what? They don't play banjos in Burma. It's some kind of stringed instrument, I guess. And then so she used to sing a song, which seems to be something like, you know, stranger, something or other, and we used to watch the steamers and the hatties Pilintique. Well, hati is not a Burmese word. It's a Hindi word. It's a Hindi word for elephant. You'll know it from the Jungle Book because the elephant in the Jungle Books is called hati. Hati is a common word for elephant in Hindi. Pilintique, well, that's probably true because teak comes from Burma. In fact, there's a very famous bridge just south of Mandalay called Ubain. And it's the longest teak bridge in the world, and it goes across the Irrawaddy, connecting villages in the south of Mandalay to each other. I went there once to see if I can pull up some slides of it. So yeah, elephant's Pilintique is probably right. In that sludgy, squidgy creek. Well, I don't understand that. I mean, the banks of the Irrawaddy are pretty muddy, I guess, and people do work all along the bank, and I guess it's sludgy in places. I think that's just filler. And then it says that's all behind me now, because I'm back in London, because he did his 10-year stint. And now I'm stuck in London, and I prefer Burma. Well, now that's also very colonialist. Because I'm this working class guy. I don't know. He probably lives in the East End. Although in the text here it says that he goes walking with housemaids from Chelsea to the Strand. Well, that's all pretty much central London, but he probably lives in East London, and his lot is to, marry a working class girl somewhere from East London also, and he doesn't like it. He would much rather be in a land that's brighter and cleaner and sunnier, because he talks about the blasted drizzle at some point and wasting leather on the cobblestones, and he'd just rather be out in the beautiful rice fields of Burma. Well, you may, but the Burmese don't want you there. You were colonialists. You fought wars. You killed us. So don't be sentimental about that. You carried a rifle, and if your officer told you to shoot Burmese soldiers, you would. So you don't have the right to be sentimental about it. And Kipling doesn't have the right for two reasons. One, because he was part of that colonial mentality, and he was part of the occupying forces, and he knows nothing about Burma. I mean, nothing. What he knows is that he saw a beautiful woman on a temple step for a day and fantasized about some kind of romance between him and her, I guess, but translated into this 10-year soldier and her. It's nonsense. It's just nonsense. And so the last verse just is the one that annoys me the most. Like, ship me somewhere east of Suez, where the best is like the worst. Really, the best is like the worst. What in blazes does that even mean? Where there ain't no 10 commandments. Well, no, there aren't any Christians there, or Jews, or Judeo-Christians, or what have you, so there aren't any 10 commandments. But they have laws, and they have cultural rules. So like, what's in the 10 commandments? You shall not kill, you shall not steal. Like, they work in Burma. You don't get a license to kill. Well, again, if you're a British soldier, you get the license to kill. You don't get the license to steal. You don't get the license to commit adultery and covet your neighbor's ox and so forth. What does he mean there ain't no Ten Commandments? What he means is, just because like London is behind me, I'm gonna pretend that all of the rules that apply in civil society don't apply to me, which is also what old men from Australia and Europe going to Thailand think. Like, okay, I can't do all this stuff that I want to do in London or in Brisbane or wherever, but I can do it here in Pattaya or in Phuket. Well, that's why people hate you. That's just a simple point, right? And where a man can raise a thirst. The temple bells are calling, and it's there that I would be by the old Moulmein pagoda, looking lazy to the sea. Like somebody changed his mind when he got there. And then back into the refrain. So there's the road to Mandalay. It's a terrible poem. It has nothing to do with Burma and Mandalay. And I hope you enjoyed my critique. And please join me again when I come back. Maybe Friday, not sure. Maybe some cooking, not sure. But please like, please subscribe, and I will see you again. Have a good week.